Shalom and welcome to Ta'alumot Ba'ivrit and Lashana Tova, to a sweet new year, to a good new year. It is very traditional for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Teruah that we study Genesis 22, which is known as the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. This is a very famous passage in Judaism, in Messianic Judaism, and in Christianity as well, where we get to see very prophetic insights of Messiah Yeshua through the binding of Isaac, as Abraham, his father, offers him up as an offering. So today we're going to look at something in Genesis 22 and how it correlates with something that Yeshua said in the Gospel of John. So before we get into Genesis 22 and the scriptures that I'm going to read, which are going to be verses 4 and 5, I want to first talk about the Yachidah. Okay, so in Genesis 22, it talks about offering Abraham's only begotten son. The word "your only begotten son" is Yachidcha, and it comes from Yachid. And this doesn't mean only begotten son, because if you think about it, how can that make sense? It's Abraham's only begotten son whenever his first son was Ishmael. So he had Ishmael with Hagar, and this was before he had Isaac. So how can it be called his only begotten son? It's not possible. The reason is because this word in Hebrew doesn't actually mean only begotten son. Yachidah, it comes from the word yechad, and what it means is complete unity. That's what it means. And so what it's actually saying is the son who is just like you in every way. The son who says what you say, thinks what you think, and does what you do. He completely nullifies himself to do exactly what you do. So what God was saying when he said to Abraham, your only begotten son, your Yachidcha, he was saying the son who is exactly like you. And it was prophesying of the Messiah, according to Zechariah 12, who is also called the Yachidah. And it's showing that he is the son who is exactly like the Father, which is why Yeshua continually said, I and the Father are one. If you do not recognize me, you do not recognize him, because I say nothing of my own accord. I do nothing of my own accord, but only that which I hear the Father say and that which I see the Father do. And that is exactly the relationship that we get to see between Abraham and his son, Isaac. So going into this, I want to go into verse 4. And this is whenever God says, Abraham, bring your son to a place which I will show you. Okay, and so starting in verse 4, it says, Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayar et hamakom merachok. It says, in the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. He saw hamakom, the place, merachok, from afar. Okay, what I want to point out here is notice how it says in the third day. It's very, very specific which day he looked. Okay, so it's in the third day of his journey, and he looks up, and it says that he sees the place from afar. This is very, very important, because this is the place with which he was supposed to bind up and offer his son Isaac. It's the place of Moriah, which is the same place that the temple was built. Okay, and Moriah, where the place which he saw, it actually is Hamor Yah, and it means to be converted to Yah. It means to be converted to God. And so it's showing that this place which we are seeing, which is where the sacrifice was to take place, is the place where of conversion, right? We're being converted back to Yah through the Yechidah, through the only begotten son who is just like the Father. Well, I want to point something out here. How it said that Abraham looked up on the third day and he saw the place from afar. I want to offer an interpretation that this is not a physical distance. He is not looking and seeing a physical place from afar. He's actually getting a spiritual vision of the Messiah himself in the distant future, from afar in the future. This doesn't have to do with physical distance, but spiritual distance in time. Okay, and the reason I say this is because the word merachok This is the word merachok, which is from afar. It says Abraham saw the place, hamakom merachok, from afar. This merachok has the gematria of 348. What else has the gematria of 348 is Mashach, which is where we get Mashiach, Messiah. And so what it's actually saying is that he looked up and he saw the place of the Messiah on the third day. He got a heavenly vision as he was taking his son Isaac of the resurrection of Messiah, which is why it says in Hebrews chapter 11 that Abraham knew that the Father was going to resurrect his son Isaac from the dead, which we actually get to see that here in verse 5. And so after verse 4, when it says that he sees the place from afar, he sees the place of Mashiach on the third day, the resurrection day, it says in verse 5, Vayomer Avraham el na'arav, it says, and Abraham said to his lads, the two that were with him, Shavu lachem po, he said, dwell here for yourselves, im hachamor, with the donkey, va'ani v'hana'ar, me and the lad, talking about me and Isaac, neocha ad ko vanish tachaveh vanushavu. That's important. So look, it says, and we will go to the place and worship. And then it says, v'nashuva alechem, and we will return to you. So he actually says that me and Isaac are going to go, and he knows he's about to go sacrifice Isaac. But notice what he says, v'nashuva, and we will return back. So he knew two things. A, I'm going to sacrifice my son Isaac. B, me and Isaac will return to you. So he saw the place from afar, and then in the very next verse, he says, I'm going to go sacrifice him, and we're going to return. Why did he know that Isaac was going to return with him? Because he knew that the Father was going to resurrect him. Because he saw the heavenly vision, merachok, from afar. He saw the vision of Mashiach. He saw the resurrection of Yeshua. And this explains John chapter 8, verse 56. Whenever Yeshua is talking and he says, your father Abraham did long to see my day, and he saw it and rejoiced. We have to think about something. Yeshua said this in the gospel thousands of years after Abraham. So what was he talking about when he said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced? He's talking about this day right here. He's talking about the day of resurrection, the third day when Yeshua rose from the grave. Okay, this is the exact thing that God was calling Abraham to bring his Yachidah, Isaac, his only begotten son who is just like him, to do. And on the third day he gets a heavenly vision of the Messiah resurrecting. And so he knew that God was going to resurrect Isaac. I hope that this blesses you today. Shalom, shalom.